Today's question is, why do I always think that people are angry with me? Perhaps somebody's tone changes slightly. They're quieter than usual. They don't smile when you see them. Or they take longer than normal to reply to that text message that you sent them. And almost immediately, you feel it. Do you know that uncomfortable feeling in your body? Then what happens? The questions begin. Have I done something wrong? Did I upset them? Was there something I said? Should I apologise? Do I need to fix this? And before the other person has even told you how they feel, your mind's already decided they're angry with me. But let me ask you something. How do you know? Have they told you that they're angry? Has something clearly happened between the two of you? Or did something change and your body immediately interpreted that as danger? Because those are not the same thing. And this is the part that I think that many people miss. You may not actually be detecting anger. You may be detecting uncertainty. And somewhere along the way, your mind learned to translate uncertainty into, I must have done something wrong. So today, I don't simply want to ask why you think people are angry with you. I want to explore a more specific question. Why does your mind make you responsible for another person's mood before you even know what that mood means? Imagine you and I are sitting together and you tell me, I know this sounds ridiculous, but whenever somebody's behaviour changes, I immediately think it's because of me. I wouldn't think it was ridiculous. I'd probably ask, can you take me to the last time that happened? And perhaps you say, yesterday, I sent my friend a message. Normally she replies quite quickly, but this time she didn't reply for hours. So I might ask, what did you notice first? Was it simply the absence of a reply? Or did you notice a feeling in your body? Perhaps your stomach tightened. Perhaps you became restless. Perhaps you kept checking your phone. And then I'd ask, what did your mind tell you the silence meant? Maybe it said, she's annoyed with me. I shouldn't have said that. She probably thinks I'm too much. I've upset her. Maybe I should send another message. Perhaps I should apologise just in case. Now let's pause here. What do you actually know at this point? You know that you sent a message. You know that your friend hasn't replied yet. That's all. Everything else is a story that your mind's created to explain that gap. And notice which explanation it chose. It didn't say, she might be driving, she might be in a meeting, her phone might be in another room, she might be having a difficult day. So out of all the possible explanations, your mind selected the one in which you were the problem. Why that explanation? Why does self-blame feel more believable than all the other possibilities? And that's the question I'd want us to become curious about. Because perhaps the delayed reply isn't the real problem. Perhaps the real problem is what uncertainty allows your mind to imagine. Let's say your friend eventually replies, "Sorry, been in meetings all day." What happens inside you? You relax, your breathing changes, the tension begins to leave your body. You might even think, "Oh, of course, I knew I was being silly." But you weren't being silly. Your body was responding to the meaning that it had attached to that silence. Your friend's explanation didn't change what had happened during those hours. It changed your understanding of what had happened. So for hours, you were not responding only to a delayed message. You were responding to what you feared that the delay meant about you. That's a very different experience. And if this happens regularly, it's exhausting. Because now you're not simply relating to other people, you're actually constantly monitoring them. Their tone, their expression, the length of their messages, how quickly they reply, whether they use the same punctuation, whether they seem slightly quieter than they were yesterday. You're looking for that moment that something changes. And the moment it does, you begin searching for what you might have done to cause it. Perhaps this happens with your partner. They come through the door and they're quieter than usual. They don't say very much. They put their bag down and they go upstairs. You feel that familiar change inside you. So if we were talking, I might ask, what did you notice? And you could say, they seemed off. I'd ask, well, what does off mean? Were they angry? Or were they simply quiet? Did they say that you'd done something? Or did their behaviour feel different from what you expected? And then the most important question, what did you make that difference mean? Perhaps your mind immediately began looking backwards. Did I forget something? Was it what I said this morning? Were they expecting me to do something? Are they disappointed with me? And by the time they tell you that they've had a terrible day at work, you may have already spent an hour preparing for basically a conflict that wasn't happening. Their mood was real. Your observation that something had changed may have been completely accurate, but the conclusion that it must be about you was an assumption. That distinction matters. Because sometimes people say, but I'm usually right. I can always tell when something's wrong. And perhaps you can. You may be very good at noticing small changes in people. But noticing that something has changed is not the same as knowing why it has changed. That might be the part that changes everything. So here's what I find fascinating. Blaming yourself can sometimes feel safer than not knowing. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Why would believing somebody is angry with you feel safer? Because if you caused the problem, perhaps you can fix it. You can apologise. You can explain. You can become quieter. can become more helpful. You can change your behaviour. You can try to make the other person happy again. But if you don't know why they're quiet, you have no control over the situation. So your mind may choose a painful explanation because a painful explanation can feel more manageable than uncertainty does. They're angry because of me gives you something to solve. I don't know what they're feeling, asks you to remain in the unknown. And for some people, the unknown is what feels unbearable. So perhaps that hyper-specific problem isn't only, I think people are angry with me. Perhaps it's when I cannot immediately explain somebody's change in mood, I make myself responsible for it so that I can feel in control again. That's not attention seeking. It's not you being dramatic. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your intuition is always wrong. It may mean that your mind has learned that detecting a change and responding to it quickly is important. If we were exploring this together, I might ask, when did you first begin paying such close attention to other people's moods? Not because there must be one dramatic event, and not because everybody who experiences this has the same kind of childhood, but because patterns often make more sense when we understand what they once helped us to do. So perhaps you grew up around somebody whose moods, they could change unexpectedly. One moment everything was fine, the next they were shouting and withdrawing or slamming doors or giving you the silent treatment. Perhaps nobody explained what was happening. You simply felt the atmosphere change. So you learned to notice footsteps, facial expressions, the way a door closed, the tone in somebody's voice. You may have learned that if you spotted the change early enough, you could adjust yourself. You become quiet. Be helpful, or stay out of the way. Try to make things better. Or perhaps your experience was less obvious. Maybe you learned that being liked, agreeable, or good helped relationships feel secure. Maybe conflict felt like frightening. Maybe another person's disappointment felt like rejection. Or perhaps this pattern developed later through a relationship in which silence, withdrawal, or changes in tone really did signal that something was wrong. There are many ways that we can learn this. The important thing is not to force your experience into one explanation. It's to ask, what does my mind learn to expect when somebody's behaviour changes? Because your mind is not simply trying to make you anxious. It may be trying to prevent you from being caught off guard. The difference is that a strategy designed to protect you can eventually make every small change feel personally significant. One of the most important distinctions we can make is between feeling and knowing. I feel as though they're angry with me is honest. I know they're angry with me is a conclusion. And sometimes the feeling is so strong that it seems like evidence. Your heart is racing. Your stomach is tightened. You feel the urge to explain yourself. Surely your body wouldn't react like that if there was nothing wrong. But a strong feeling tells us that something has been activated within us. It doesn't always tell us what is happening inside somebody else. An anxious body can create a very convincing story. The feeling arrives first. Then the mind searches for an explanation. And if self-blame is familiar, the explanation may become, well, it must be me. So the next time you find yourself saying, I know they're angry with me, could you just pause for a minute and ask, do I know that? Or do I feel unsafe because I don't know what they're feeling? That is a very different question. What if you're not responsible for every shift you notice in another person? What if somebody can be quiet without rejecting you? What if a delayed reply is simply a delayed reply until you have more information? What if you can notice that something feels different without appointing yourself as the cause? And what if the goal is not to stop being perceptive? Perhaps your sensitivity is real. Perhaps you do notice things that other people miss. The goal is to stop treating every observation as proof. You can notice a change without filling in the blank. And you can care about somebody without managing their emotions. You can ask instead of assuming, and you can allow another person to tell you if there is a problem, rather than punishing yourself in advance for one that may not exist. This week, notice the moment when they seem different becomes they're angry with me. That tiny shift is where the pattern lives. When you notice it, pause and ask, what actually happened? What story am I telling myself? What evidence do I genuinely have? Then I want you to add one more question. If I don't know what they're feeling yet, can I allow myself not to know? You're not trying to convince yourself that your fear is ridiculous. You're giving yourself enough space to distinguish a possibility from a fact. Because the greatest shift may not be discovering that nobody is angry with you. Sometimes people will be angry, and sometimes a conversation will be needed. The shift is recognizing that you do not have to anticipate, absorb, and repair every emotion around you before anybody has asked you to do. You're allowed to wait for information. You're allowed to ask. And you're allowed to recognize that another person's mood can belong to them without automatically becoming a judgment of you. So let's return to the exact moment. Somebody's tone changes. They become quiet. They don't reply. You feel the alarm in your body. What do you do next? Perhaps you normally rush to solve it. You send another message. You ask repeatedly if they're okay. You apologise without knowing what you're apologising for. You change your behaviour to try to recover a sense of safety. But what if, before doing any of that, you separated from what happened from what you imagined? So ask yourself, what actually happened? My friend hasn't replied yet. My partner is quieter than usual. My manager walked past without smiling. Then ask yourself, what story have I attached to it? They're angry. I've disappointed them. I'm in trouble. I need to fix it. And finally, what do I genuinely know? Not what you sense, not what you fear, not what has happened in a similar situation before, What do you know about this situation? Sometimes there may be evidence that something is wrong. If there is, you can respond to it. You can ask a calm, direct question. You seem a little quieter than usual. Is everything okay between us? Or sometimes the honest answer will be, I don't know yet. And perhaps that is the part your nervous system needs to practice. Not convincing yourself that nobody is ever angry. Not ignoring genuine problems. And not pretending everything's fine. Simply allowing, I don't know, to exist without immediately turning it into, must be my fault. If this conversation felt familiar, let me know what part resonated with you in the comments. And if you'd like a space to explore this pattern further, gently, there's a free resource in the description. It's called the Inner Safety Reset. It's built for exactly this kind of moment when your mind is filling in the blanks and your body doesn't actually have the answers to yet.